An EFT tapping emotional freedom technique. It's all about releasing stress out of your body. And this stress might appear like a fear or a phobia, or it might be anxiety, panic, any of those things. And what happens is sometimes that gets stuck. And so we keep repeating patterns. Fear of flying, eating the same things over and over and over again. Having the same sorts of relationships that are not healthy relationships for us. Spending money we don't have. Alcohol, too much alcohol. Shopping, that sort of thing. And the way EFT tapping works is that when you study it, we talk about meridians, and there's meridians all throughout your body. And that it was a very Eastern medicine type thing, and people didn't really, some people were a bit, oh, that's Eastern, it's woo-woo, it's woo-woo, it's woo-woo. I'm very much into the woo-woo, so that's grand. And there's a whole book called Why the Woo-Woo Works. I would recommend you go and read it if you think, oh, it's too woo-woo. What they've since discovered is actually what Eastern medicine was calling meridians are the nerves. It's the nervous system. And so where we tap on the inner eyebrow, the outer eyebrow, under the eyes, under the nose, under the mouth, under the collarbone, under the arm. Now the arm, to do it, you take the width of your hand. So take your hand right up in your armpit, and wherever your little finger finishes, that's where you would tap. Oh, camera didn't like that. The top of the head. And find these meridians on your own. You can run now this gently because the skin is delicate. And for me, and it's just there under the pupil. If I'm looking straight ahead. And all it feels like is it's just a bit that's a little bit more sensitive than the rest of the orbital bone. You're running your fingers on the bone. But gently, it's delicate skin. If you can't find it here, this is the next one. You go in and you press right in that bit where the nose meets this bit of your lip. His name I've forgotten. And that's really quite sore. If you were to pinch, it's really, really sore. So don't press too hard or too much. And those are just nerve endings, big, big, big nerve endings. And there'll be a file attached to this that'll tell you where each of these go. So the one here ends up with your stomach, and the ones at your collarbone end up with your kidneys. The kidneys are important because on top of the kidneys are your adrenal glands. And they're the things that are pumping out adrenaline when we're anxious, stressed, ready to go into that fight or flight mode. And when we're tapping here, what do you think about it? If you were lying, if you were running from a lion, a tiger, or a bear, you wouldn't be sitting tapping. You wouldn't have time to sit and tap. Or you'd be frozen, hoping it passes you by. So sitting, tapping, breathing tells your adrenals, that everything is okay. And so a lovely one to do with that is, I am safe. I am safe. So why do these things happen? Why do we get into this state? Why do we need tapping? There's several different reasons, and it depends on why you need tapping, I suppose, in some circumstances. But the basics, the very, very basics would be your body in your head is your little amygdala. And in here, your little amygdala in your limbic system. And it's responsible for keeping you safe. And amygdala is almond. In Latin, it's almond. And it's meant to be almond sized and almond shaped. And its job is to scan for whatever's going on and looking for danger. For some of us, it's not almond sized and almond shaped. It's more like a walnut. Which, when you think of the size of the brain, that's really quite big. But for those Zen Buddhist monks, do you know the guys sit cross legs and you feel, oh, for those guys, the amygdala is the size of a pea. And the beautiful thing that they now know, which they've only kind of found out in the last 20 years, is that your brain can change. They kind of thought once you got to a certain age, that was it, your brain had stopped. They now understand there's a thing called neuroplasticity, and it means the brain can change. And it's these neurons that fire together, wire together. And what has happened is something in your life has frightened you, and and it's wired together. And it's maybe done it at a time where you've been really, really vulnerable. So it's only taken one. It doesn't even need to be a big fright. It could be something where you were emotionally vulnerable. Something happened that wouldn't annoy or worry somebody else, and this is fired together and become a stressor for you because you were emotionally vulnerable at the time that it happened. For other people, it's a thing that happens. They witness it and they say it over and over again. So if you think about spiders, for most of us, I'm not afraid of spiders. Thankfully, that was not something that happened in our household. But for most of us, we've witnessed someone being frightened of a spider, screaming, jumping out of the way, leaving the room, getting somebody else to catch it and put it out. And if you witness that enough times, you learn to be frightened of spiders. And being frightened of spiders in itself is not a bad thing, but particularly if you live where there are dangerous spiders. I live in Northern Ireland. Our spiders aren't dangerous. Not certainly not the ones that live in our households normally. The native spiders are not dangerous. So we don't need to be frightened of them. And you're only born with two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. So everything else is learned. And the beautiful thing about everything else being learned is that it can be unlearned. So even if you're frightened of spiders and have been, as far as you're aware, your whole life, with EFT tapping, you can get rid of that fear because it's just get stuck somewhere in your nervous system because you've learned by watching someone or by something happening to you at a vulnerable moment that has got that emotion stuck in your body. So how we resolve these big emotions, these stuck emotions, is by tapping on these nerve endings, these acupressure points on your nerve endings. And that sends a vibration down the nerves to move that stuck emotion out. Now, how this was discovered was a Dr. Roger Callahan, and there was others in and around the same time, but he's the first documented one to have done this. And he resolved Mary's water phobia, but he was doing immersion therapy. So the story goes. And he had this lady in immersed, literally immersion theory, because he had her immersed in water. And the next thing she got up and she ran outside and she got into his pool and she started swimming. This was 1980s. And even he was a bit surprised. He was like, what did I do differently? Because it doesn't normally work that quickly. And what he'd been doing was tapping on her face while he was talking to her about her fear of water. So he explored that a bit more, and a few others came along, and Gary Craig changed it. In Dr. Callahan's day, what he came up with was thought field therapy. And he had different scripts for different things, whether it was a fear or a phobia or an addiction or whatever. And he had different scripts for that and different points you would tap for those. And that's brilliant. But the problem with that is that if a client comes to me and tells me the story they're telling themselves, I am addicted to crisps because I'm not worthy. I am an emotional eater. I don't know. I'm bored at night. I don't know what else to do with myself in the evenings. That kind of thing. And so I tapped on boredom or worthiness or whatever. I might miss the underlying problem because usually the story that people are telling themselves is not what's actually going on. So then we start. So now when we start with this, that's Gary Craig's and these others that came up with this emotional freedom technique, which is a similar sort of script, and we tap on all the points. Because when we tap, sometimes what happens is the real story comes out. And the real story might be Um, One of association actually with love. It doesn't need to be a bad thing. So for me with chocolate, it was very much a Sunday, late Sunday afternoon. Um, the whole family would have sat down to watch a movie. In those days, you only had about three channels. And there was a Sunday afternoon movie. And we'd all have sat down together in the living room and we'd have had our sweeties. We were allowed our sweeties at the weekend and you got to choose what sweeties you were having for your Sunday treat. And that's where my association from chocolate came from was to love. And I could have told you all sorts of things that I was an emotional eater and what in the essence that was still true, but it was more the fact that I was associating chocolate with this feeling of cozy, warm family time where everybody was together doing something. And the movies were not spaghetti westerns and war films. Um, but it was the fact that everybody was together because we lived in a busy household and people were at school or at work and so on and so forth. And so it was lovely that Sunday afternoon time together. And that's where so my wee brain made this association that chocolate meant love and time together. And chocolate doesn't mean that at all. And the reason then I kept eating and eating and eating and eating and eating the chocolate was I wasn't getting from it what I needed, which was connection. Some of the other big names now would be Nick Ortner and his sister Jessica. So, I mean, if you don't resonate with me, and that's fine because sometimes we don't, and you have to find the right person whose voice, whose accent, whose energy resonates with you. I would say go on. Don't do this one and go, oh no, I really don't like that stuff. Go and find somebody else because it really does work. But you maybe just need a different person to help you um find the way that will work for you, the voice that will work for you. And the thing that works the best is using your own language. So there's a bit of a formula that goes with this. And the first thing, if you were to come to me, I would be asking you to tell me your unpleasant feelings. And I'm doing it now, I'm writing down unpleasant on one side, on the left hand side of the page. And you can do this for yourself. And the reason I use the word unpleasant is because emotions in and of themselves are not negative or bad. Anger is not bad. Anger shows us where somebody or we ourselves have crossed our boundaries. Frustration can show us where we want something to go right and where we want to invest more time, effort, energy. They're unpleasant or they're uncomfortable to feel, but they're not in and of themselves negative or bad. And so sometimes we put labels on these things that don't help us. They don't support us. So we know anger is just showing us something and we don't act on it. But we investigate it and go, what is this emotion? And not just anger, any of the emotions. What is this emotion trying to tell me? We'll get a lot further than going, that's a bad feeling. That's a negative feeling. I shouldn't be feeling that. Let's push that down and suppress it. No, bring it out, bring it into the open, investigate it um, in an appropriate manner. Sometimes, if you're at work or in Asda, Tesco's, Aldi, other shopping centres are available, it might not be the appropriate time and you might have to hold on to it until you get home and then unpack it a bit. But in the unpleasant column, first of all, we're going to write down whatever it is that we're feeling that is unpleasant and uncomfortable. And that could be a feeling, it could be a memory, or it could be a sensation. Because sometimes there are emotions, to put labels on them is a little bit difficult because frustration is very like anger. Excitement is very like anxiety. Nervousness it can go either way. It can be an excited nervousness because, oh, I'm so excited, I'm going to do this thing. So it's making me a little bit, or, oh, no. And they're very, very close. So sometimes it's really difficult. So sensations are great in helping us to identify whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, comfortable or uncomfortable. So it might be that it's If I was to say to you, it's close, it's big, it's spiky, it's dark, it's heavy, it's red, it sounds like thunder, it grates, it really grinds. You're going to know I'm not having a very pleasant day, and you might not be able to name it. And somebody will go, "Oh, that's anger," and somebody else will go, "No, it sounds like frustration." We don't need to name it. We just need to know it's unpleasant. So whatever is most appropriate for you in that left-hand column, whether it's we might say tension, or we might say stress, or we might say um, heaviness, headache, anxiety, panic. And I'm going to pick those because everybody understands stress. And if you can learn how to do this in a general form for stress, you can follow how to do this for yourself for any other situation. And then you're going to score it. So let me see. Tension. Well, normally if somebody's coming to me, they're going to be a 7 or an 8. Let's be truthful. 8. Heaviness, 7. Headache, 9. Anxiety, 9. Panic, 9. Okay. So out of those, the ones I have scored the most are headache, anxiety, and panic. And a headache can be your blood pressure is so high, or you're so tense. Everything's, you're pinning your ears round to the back of your head, and your eyes are looking for the danger, and your shoulders are up here. That everything is so that you've caused yourself a headache, or it could be your blood pressure is so high from the stress, you've caused yourself a headache. And there's two reasons we score. One, because sometimes this is so like magic that people kind of go, what? No, I can't have been feeling what I think I was feeling when I first came in. But also because as we go through the system, it's when we get down to a certain point that we change the language. And then we get to another point and we change the language again, which is why the scoring is important. Well, so we tap for a while and we stop and we rescore. And then we tap again and we stop and we rescore. Um, and the other thing we do there is we pick the worst three to do our setup statement. And then what we do is we write down the pleasant words. And the pleasant words are how we want to feel. And they're usually the direct opposite. Usually, but not always. The one that comes to mind is a lot of people would say overwhelmed, just so overwhelmed. And when I say to them, how do you want to feel? Overwhelmed, I think is a word, but it's not a word we use. And we certainly don't want to be underwhelmed. So sometimes it's about playing around with the language until we find the word that fits. And part of the problem is that we're so used to talking about the negative that's going on that we forget that we ever felt positive at all and that we have language for it. And one of the other difficulties is of all the thousands of words we have for emotions, we kind of use 6 to 12. And so our repertoire is a bit small. And sometimes we need a little bit of help to think about what the opposite might be. And it might not be the opposite, it might be something close. So instead of tension, I might want to feel relaxed. Instead of stress, I might want to feel calm. Instead of heaviness, I might want to feel lightness. Instead of a headache, I might want to feel ease. Instead of anxiety, I might want to feel release or peace. Instead of panic, I want to feel peace. So there's a little bit of playing around with language, but it does have to be your language because it's got to work for you. If you tap on my words, it'll work to a level, but only to a level. If you tap on your words, if you write down your words and tap on those, it'll work so much better. I'm going to share my screen for just a little minute and show you this page. So these are different ways to do the setup statement. Even though I have this, and you name the emotion, feeling, or memory, I completely accept myself. Even though I have, and we do this while we're tapping on the side of our karate chop, even though I have this, I love and accept myself. Even though I have this, name the feeling, I accept this about myself and I'm open to changing it. Even though I have this, again, name your emotion, I choose to do something about it. Even though I have this emotion, I am taking steps to change it. I mean, the reason I'm giving you these is because not everybody's comfortable with what I would say. I am fully woo-woo. So when I say, even though I have this emotion, I fully love and I accept this emotion and I fully love and accept myself. And sometimes that's too much for people. That just feels too much. So what I would do if I were you is take a screenshot of that. So that you will, but there will be documents somewhere pinned. And as well as this, you will get this, which will show you where the tapping points are. Okay? So I'm going to stop sharing. I'll back to that. So take a screen print, save it, and keep it for later. Okay. So we start, and I'm going to do mine. And it would be beautiful if you would tap along with me and say the words. But for the setup statement, you say your words that are relevant to you. And your words were stress, where I say tension, stress, heaviness, headache, anxiety, panic, your words might be different. So you say, and it has to work for you. It has to be your language. If I tell you what you're feeling, this is not going to work. So write down your own words, but you'll see how this works, and you can tap along with me. So on the side of the karate chop, we say, although I have this headache, I accept this feeling. I fully love and accept myself. Although I have this anxiety, I accept this feeling. And I fully love and accept myself. And although I feel this panic, I accept this feeling. And I fully love and accept myself. And then we go to the inner eyebrow. I have so much tension in my shoulders. I'm pinning my ears around the back of my head. My blood pressure is so high because of this level of stress that I have a headache. And I feel full of anxiety. I am just so worried about what's going to happen next. It's making me panic. And all this anxiety, stress, headache, it's making me feel sick. My stomach is in knots. My shoulders are so tight. And my jaw, oh my goodness, that might be where the headache's coming from too. Because I'm holding my jaw so tight. Because I can't do this anymore. This situation is so bad. I just can't cope with this anymore. This tension in my muscles. This stress due to this situation. This heaviness. And the headache, my head is pounding. Oh, pounding. A level of anxiety. My anxiety's through the roof. And that's making me panic. And all that is making me feel so ill. Stomach's in knots. And I just don't feel well. My head is pounding. I can't sleep because I'm so stressed. And all my muscles are so tight. Can't relax. Due to these levels of stress, this anxiety, and this panic. I'm so stressed. And then we stop, we put our hands on our heart, and we take a lovely, big, deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. In your own time and in your own capacity. And I try to make it a deep breath without forcing it. Because again, if you're breathing down into the bottom of your lungs, you're moving your diaphragm. And that moves it across your solar plexus. And your solar plexus is a wee ganglion of nerves, a wee junction box of nerves. um, just below your sternum, near your stomach, and it sends a message to the amygdala to say, we're breathing again. Because when you're in fight, flight, freeze mode, you're only breathing in the top part of your lungs. It's a shallow and rapid breath. So when you breathe into the bottom of the lungs, it sends a message to the amygdala. We're starting to breathe, so we must be safe now. And you'll need to take, depending on how stressed you've been, how long you've been stressed, how big the stressor was, you might need to take several breaths, but at least 3. It's a little stressed, and it hasn't been. If it was like, somebody banged the door and you suddenly jumped, 3 lovely big deep breaths. We'll move that along for you. So hands on, big deep breath. And we score again. Now, do not be surprised if at this point your score goes up, because you've finally given voice to what's going on in your body. And now that it's got your attention, your amygdala might just go, this is so bad, And so your tension, which was 8, all of them, in fact, might just have gone to a 10. And that's okay. It really is. Please don't make the panic worse at that stage and think, oh, this is making me worse instead of better. Because it happens. And it's okay. And it's just the fact that usually for most people, we've been ignoring this for so long that our body's now like, finally, you're listening to me. And let me tell you how bad this is for me. And so we start tapping again, just on the negative. So tension. And we can keep telling the full story if we want, the situation, what's going on, or we can just say the words: tension, stress, heaviness, anxiety, panic, tension, stress, heaviness, headache, anxiety, panic, heaviness, tension, stress, anxiety, panic, heaviness, stress, tension, panic, anxiety, heaviness, stress. Hands on, big deep breath. And we score again. And it might have dropped. And it might have dropped a lot. And it might have only dropped a little bit. Nobody can dictate that. And what's happening for you is happening for you, and it's right for you. Don't judge it. It just is what it is. But equally, what might happen is that other words might come up. So if you come in to me with anger is always a secondary emotion. Anger is usually pain and hurt disguised, because it is easier. It's visceral. It's active. It's a very active type emotion. Whereas hurt and pain is very, very vulnerable, and we don't like being vulnerable, usually. So you might have come in like me with the story of when I'm bored, I eat chocolate, or when I'm emotional, I eat chocolate, and so on and so forth. And in a way, that was right, because I was looking for love. And it's at this, and people do put hands on, and they'll go, or in the middle of tapping, they'll go, oh my Lord. And it's real light bulb moments. And it's those light bulb moments we love, because then we're going to get to the real story. And at that point it would be, for me, I just have an image of lying on the living room floor with the whole family around us, watching TV and eating chocolate. And that's where the connection had been made. And with the tapping, I was able to break that. And I now don't. At that point, I was eating chocolate 5 times a day, because it wasn't doing what I needed it to do. And now, if I feel that emotion at all, I phone a friend, I go for a walk with a friend, I find one of my family members, and maybe ring them or go and find them and give them a cuddle, because it's connection and love that I'm looking for. And chocolate was never going to fill that. So you might have to add some different words. And there might be some words where you go, do you know what? The heaviness is gone completely, or the headache's gone completely. Now I'm feeling disappointed, guilt, shame, embarrassment, sad, lonely, lost, whatever it might be, whatever it might be. Because sometimes the thing that you walk in the door and talk to me about is only covering something else up. And once we start to get into this, then we realize what it is. This tapping releases that. It releases the covering blanket and allows us to get to what's going on underneath. So then we tap again. And just the one word. So tension, stress, heaviness, headache, anxiety, panic. And we add in the other words if there were any other words. So shame, guilt, embarrassment, tension, stress, headache, anxiety, panic, shame, guilt, embarrassment, heaviness, headache, loneliness, lost. And again, and you do it for a little bit longer. Hands on, big deep breath. And again, we score. And sometimes you'll find one reduces really, really quickly and one lingers a little bit longer. We can't dictate how these things will work. But when your score gets down to about a 5 or a 6, we then change the tapping. So now that we've got down to 5, 6, we're going to tap on both the pleasant and the unpleasant. So we're going to say, instead of this tension, I can allow myself to relax. Instead of this stress, I can allow myself to feel calm. Instead of this heaviness, I can allow myself to feel lightness. Instead of this heaviness, I can allow myself to feel ease. Instead of anxiety, I can allow myself to feel release. Instead of this panic, I can allow myself to feel peace, to be at peace. Top of the head, I can allow myself to feel relaxed instead of tense. I can allow myself, instead of stress, to feel calm. Heaviness, lightness. Headache, ease. Anxiety, release. Panic, peace. Tension, relax. Stress, calm. So you can go down to just the 2 words. But some people might like to still tell a bit of a story. So it might be, I can release this tension and allow myself to feel relaxed. See the importance of words? It's up to you. So the words are extremely important. It's entirely up to you whether you say a full sentence. Although I feel less stressed, I can allow myself to feel calm. Although I feel this heaviness, I can allow myself to feel light. Although I have this headache, I can feel peace. Or you can just say anxiety, release, panic, peace, tension, relaxation. Hands on, big deep breath. And then we rescore. When you get down to about a 3, all you're going to do is tap on the pleasant. And the reason for that is nature abhors a vacuum. So if we take one thing out, we've got to replace it. And we don't want to leave that where we're thinking of the 2 things. We want to just leave the pleasant emotions, the comfortable emotions, to say to the brain, this is the amygdala, this is what I want to feel. So we start again and we start with the inner eyebrow. Relax, calm, lightness, ease, release, peace, relax, calm, lightness, ease, peace, relax, calm, lightness, ease, release, peace, lightness, relax, calm, peace. Hands on, big deep breath. And actually, this time you take three big deep breaths. So we do it again, second time. And I would just score again, just to be make sure, check in, nothing has changed. And if you changed any of the words, if you added disappointment, embarrassment, um, what else did I say? Shame, guilt, those sorts of things, then you do need to come up with opposite words for those, and you would add those in and you would tap on those as well. Any questions? You have my email address on the website. Um, as I say, that document will be attached as well. And my contact details are on the bottom of it. Happy tapping. I wish you good emotional health.